I should have known the fire was coming. But you never expect it to start in your own home. Let me tell you something right off the bat, trust is a hell of a thing. You don't notice how much of your life is held up by it until someone knocks it out from under you, and you're left gasping, sprawled on the floor of your own expectations. I was 31 when it happened. My name's Ben, and at the time, I had what most would call a simple but steady life. I was working as a diesel mechanic in central Pennsylvania. Good shop, good pay, and a crew that had each other's backs. Most of us were small town guys. We fixed engines, drank too much coffee, played poker on Fridays, and didn't complain too much unless the Steelers lost. I wasn't rich, but I had enough. I had my dad's old 1973 Mustang Mach 1 in the garage I was rebuilding bolt by bolt. I had a dog named Bucket, don't ask, long story. And I had Maggie. God, Maggie. She was smart, sharp-tongued, and could put away whiskey like she'd been born in a distillery. We met when I was 25 and she was 23. She'd come into the shop with a Corolla that sounded like a lawnmower mid-stroke. She stood there in paint-stained jeans and asked if I could make it stop crying. I laughed. She didn't. I think that's when I fell for her. From that day on, it was Maggie and me. 6 years of late-night takeout, driving out to the mountains just to park and talk, stupid arguments over which pizza place was better, and dancing in the kitchen to old Johnny Cash records. She made me feel seen, like really seen, in a way no one else ever had. After a while, I popped the question with a ring I bought by pawning off half my tools. She cried, said yes. We celebrated like kids who thought life owed us something good. I remember we sat out on the porch that night, her head on my shoulder, planning a wedding that was supposed to happen the next June. I got the date tattooed on my forearm because I thought, hell, if I can commit to engine rebuilds that take a year, I sure as hell can commit to this woman. She got the same one on her shoulder blade. Looking back now, I wish I'd seen the signs. They were there. Not big, flashing lights, more like little flickers. The way she started pulling away, coming home later, turning her phone screen away when it lit up. How she'd zone out during conversations, like she was somewhere else entirely, but love makes you blind. And stupid. And slow. The worst part. I trusted her completely. That's what really broke me in the end. Not the act itself, but the fact that I didn't see it coming because I had no reason to question her. Then came the night everything burned down. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were slow at the shop, and I got off earlier than usual. I thought I'd surprise Maggie with her favorite Thai takeout and maybe a bottle of that expensive wine she liked. We hadn't had a proper night together in weeks. I figured maybe life was just getting in the way, we'd reconnect. I pulled up to the house we'd been renting, a little two-bedroom with a squeaky porch and a crooked fence, but it had charm. It felt like a home. I walked up to the door quietly, wanting to catch her off guard in a sweet way, maybe a smile, a laugh, something cute. But what I got instead was silence. Strange, because the lights were on. Her car was in the driveway. I figured maybe she was napping. Then I heard it. A muffled laugh. Her laugh. From the bedroom. Another voice, male, laughing back. At first, I froze. My brain did that thing where it tries to explain away the worst-case scenario. Maybe it was the TV. Maybe her brother stopped by. Maybe, but I knew. I stepped into the hallway and everything went slow. The takeout bag slid from my hand, and I didn't even hear it hit the floor. I just remember. The way the bedroom door was slightly open, enough to see the movement, the skin, the mess of sheets. She was on top of someone. Moving, moaning. Her voice, the voice that used to whisper how much she loved me, was now the soundtrack to my worst nightmare, and him. It was Jason, my best friend. My best man. The guy the first grew up with, played Little League with, got drunk with on our 21st birthdays, and trusted more than most blood relatives. Maggie saw me first. Her eyes went wide, but she didn't scream. She didn't say anything. She just froze, like a kid caught stealing cookies. Jason turned his head. Our eyes locked, and neither of them moved. That still messes with me. They didn't even have the decency to jump off each other. To pretend they were sorry. They just stared, silent, naked, caught, like they didn't know if I was real. I didn't yell. Didn't throw anything. I just turned around, walked out, and sat on the porch. That porch where we once danced barefoot to Johnny Cash, where I told her I loved her the first time. I sat there for a long time. Maybe 15 minutes. Maybe 50. I don't know. Then I got up, got in my truck, and drove. For 2 weeks, I didn't speak to either of them. I stayed with a buddy from the shop, crashed on his couch, didn't answer calls, didn't open texts. Maggie sent one message the night it happened. I'm sorry, Ben. I didn't mean for this to happen. We need to talk. I never answered. Jason sent a longer one. Man, I messed up. I swear it wasn't planned. We were drunk. It just happened. I hate myself for it. Please don't shut me out. They were lies, all of them. I knew it. Because when you trip and fall, you don't land in someone else's bed. That takes time, planning, repetition. I didn't cry. Not once. Instead, something inside me shifted. It wasn't grief. It wasn't anger. It was something colder. Something deliberate. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to punch Jason in the face or key Maggie's car. No, that would be too easy. I was going to burn their world down. From the inside, and I was going to make damn sure they never saw the match in my hand. You don't heal by pretending it didn't happen. You heal by letting the wound scream. I didn't sleep for 3 days. I tried. God knows I tried. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, Maggie and Jason, tangled up in our bed, in my house. It wasn't just the act, it was the ease with which they did it. The casual cruelty. Like my existence had been shaved off the surface of their world. I started driving at night. Just driving. No music. No destination. Just the hum of the truck and the occasional blur of headlights. The roads out here wind through old farmland and broken fences, past homes with front porches that look like they've seen generations come and go. I used to find that comforting. Now, it just made me feel hollow. I stopped going to work for a while. Took sick leave, even though I wasn't sick, at least, not in a way Tylenol could fix. My boss, Pete, was an old school guy who didn't ask questions. Take the time you need, he said, patting my shoulder. Just don't do anything stupid. Too late. One night, about a week after the betrayal, I pulled into an old diner just outside town. The kind of place with flickering signs and a jukebox that hasn't worked since Clinton was in office. I slid into a booth in the back and ordered black coffee. I wasn't hungry. That's where I ran into Sarah. She used to work at the front desk of our shop. Smart, dry-witted, always had a comment that cut deeper than it should have. She left a few years ago after getting a gig in Harrisburg, but we kept in touch loosely. She saw me, walked over, and said, "Jesus, Ben. You look like hell." I didn't lie. I told her everything. It came out in short, cold bursts, like nails being driven into wood. She listened, didn't interrupt once. Just nodded, asked a few questions, and let me bleed out. When I finished, she leaned back and said, "So what's next?" That question sat with me. I thought about it all night. What's next? A clean break. Move on. Let them be happy. No, I couldn't, because something inside me had changed. I wasn't broken. I was sharp. I felt like a blade freshly honed. And I knew one thing, if I let this go, I'd never be whole again. Over the next week, I started watching them. Not in a creepy stalker way, more like research. Jason had moved in with Maggie. That was fast. Too fast. Like maybe this had been going on longer than either of them wanted to admit. They were trying to play house. And from the outside, it looked perfect. Pictures on social media of brunches and sunsets. Hashtags like #newbeginnings and #lovehells. It made me sick. But also, it gave me information. Jason still worked at the same real estate office. Maggie was doing freelance photography now, mostly weddings, ironically enough. I made a burner Instagram and followed both of them anonymously. The captions, the photos, the lies they told the world, it was all data. I wasn't just going to ruin their lives. I was going to wait until their happiest moment and pull the whole damn floor out from under them. And then came the post that lit the fuse: "We're getting married. Ring, can't wait to spend forever with my best friend. #second chances #healing together." The date: June 11th. Our date. The one I had tattooed on my arm. The one I gave her. That's when the switch flipped. That's when the fire took hold. I started laying the groundwork 2 months out. Step 1. Social connections. I wasn't super tight with Maggie's new circle, but I still had connections in her old one. Friends who hadn't fully picked a side when we split. Turns out, betrayal makes people uncomfortable, they'd rather ignore it than confront it. So when I reached out to a few mutual friends with a simple, "Hey, hope you're well, just wanted to clear the air, no hard feelings," they welcomed me back like nothing happened. Idiots. Step 2. Rebuild the image. I started posting again. Gym selfies, sunsets, shots of me with bucket, occasional philosophical quotes like, "Growth starts where comfort ends." Cringe. Maybe. Effective. Oh, absolutely. People love a comeback story. I wasn't healing. I was sharpening the blade. Step 3. Get inside. Maggie was planning the wedding through a small local planner named Courtney, someone I remembered from a past wedding shoot she did. I ran into Courtney, accidentally, at a farmer's market and struck up a chat. I played the part of the heartbroken but supportive ex-fiancé who just wanted everyone to be happy. Courtney, bless her gullible soul, actually said, "It's big of you, Ben." Most men would be bitter. I almost laughed in her face. Within a week, I had access to most of the wedding details. Venue, schedule, guest list, vendors. It was all falling into place. They had no idea the devil had just RSVP'd. There was one final step. I needed evidence. I wasn't going to just ruin the day emotionally. I wanted to expose them. I wanted everyone in that perfectly curated little ceremony to know the truth. So I started digging. And oh boy, did I find gold. Turns out, Maggie and Jason hadn't just cheated once. It had been going on for nearly 10 months behind my back. And not just behind mine. Jason had been sleeping with another woman too, some realtor named Cassidy who thought she was in an exclusive relationship with him. I reached out to Cassidy anonymously. She was skeptical at first, until I sent screenshots. Messages, dates, locations. Things only someone inside the relationship would know. It didn't take long for Cassidy to break. She sent me everything, pictures of them together, texts where Jason promised he was ending things with Maggie soon, voice memos, screenshots. It was beautiful. Disgusting, but beautiful. This man, my former best friend, was cheating on his mistress with my fiancé, and then made her his next fiancé after she cheated on me. Poetry. And it gave me everything I needed. I didn't want blood. I didn't want violence. I wanted truth. Public. Unavoidable. Irreversible. The kind that leaves a scar. So I spent the final month building a plan that would hit them with all three. Emotional, social, and professional. And I timed it perfectly, because what better day to burn it all down than their wedding day? I didn't just want to hurt them. I wanted them to feel the weight of their betrayal for the rest of their lives. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about truth. I don't know when it clicked, but somewhere in those weeks of playing the patient game, I realized, what I was doing wasn't just to get back at Maggie and Jason. It was about making sure they understood the magnitude of what they had done. I wasn't going to make it quick or painless. I wasn't going to throw a tantrum or give them the satisfaction of an angry confrontation. No, I was going to bury them slowly. Methodically. I didn't have to act out of pure rage. I could channel everything they'd done to me into something far more destructive. This wasn't about a momentary blow, this was about a death. The death of everything they thought they knew. And, more importantly, the death of the world they were trying to create. So, here's how I started to build my masterpiece. Step 1. The message. I had Cassidy's help. She was still bitter about the fact that she'd been played, too. When I showed her everything I had on Jason, every text, every voice memo, she went cold. At first, I thought she might back out, but then she said, "You know, if I could have a front row seat to watch this idiot burn, I'd say it'd be the best thing that's ever happened to me." So, I had her contact Maggie. Using an anonymous phone number, I had Cassidy send Maggie a text. The same one I'd gotten from Jason a month before, the one where he promised to end things with Maggie soon. But there was a twist. I included all the screenshots of Jason and Cassidy together. I didn't just want Maggie to hear the truth. I wanted her to see it, in all its unflinching, ugly detail. I wanted her to know exactly what kind of man she was marrying. I wanted her to understand how utterly insignificant she had been in Jason's eyes. How he had discarded her just like he had discarded me, and how now, he was discarding Cassidy, too. I knew Maggie would be checking her phone around lunchtime, when she was at her bridal shower. And I knew that by the time she realized the depth of what was happening, it would be too late for her to stop it. But that was just one piece of the puzzle. Step 2. The guest list. Maggie had made the mistake of sending me the full list of wedding guests by accident. She had gotten the list from her mother, who was apparently handling a lot of the details. It wasn't a huge group, about 120 people, mostly family and close friends. And I had a few key people in mind. One of the things I had learned over the years was that people care more about how they look than how they feel. Most of the people invited to the wedding didn't care about Maggie or Jason. They didn't care about their love story. But they sure as hell cared about the photos. About being able to say they were there when it happened. About telling people they attended a wedding that everyone talked about for months after. I knew some of the people on the guest list. Hell, some of them were friends of mine before they were friends with Maggie and Jason. People I knew would be all too happy to throw a little drama into the mix. And I didn't need to go far to find the perfect candidates. I contacted two of our mutual friends, Dave and Rachel. They were a married couple who lived in the next town over. I'd known Dave for years, but we'd grown distant after I got with Maggie. Rachel and I had always been friendly, but there was always this underlying tension. She'd never liked Maggie, and Maggie had never been particularly fond of Rachel. It was one of those polite dislike situations. I reached out to them both, individually, and told them the truth. Or at least, my truth. You're not going to believe this, I said to Rachel. But Jason's been cheating on Maggie. With Cassidy. And I have the proof. Rachel didn't need any convincing. She hated Maggie enough that she was already half excited by the drama. No way, she said. Is he really that much of an asshole? Oh, he is. But here's the thing, I continued. I'm planning to make sure the whole thing goes down on their wedding day. But I need help. I didn't go into full detail. I didn't have to. She already knew what I wanted. I did the same with Dave. He was a little harder to sway, but when I showed him the proof, the text messages, the photos, he was hooked. Man, I don't know if I can stomach being there, but I won't lie, this is amazing. They both agreed to show up at the wedding, uninvited, under the guise of supporting the bride. But their real purpose was much darker, to watch the whole thing burn. Step 3. The wedding planner. I've never been a fan of the wedding industry, it's overpriced and overhyped. But I had a perfect in with the planner who was handling Maggie and Jason's wedding. Her name was Courtney, and she was more concerned with making sure the tables were set up just right than making sure the couple was happy. But when I showed her the texts and the evidence, I knew I had her. At first, she was hesitant. She didn't want to be involved in any drama. But when I told her I could guarantee that her business would be plastered across every news site in town for the wedding disaster of the decade, she started to listen. I'll make sure everything goes smoothly, she said, already planning the little details. But you have to promise me you'll make it count. Don't make this just a little spat. I want it to go viral. Oh, it would. By the time the wedding day arrived, I had everything in place. Cassidy had already sent the message to Maggie. Rachel and Dave had confirmed their attendance. And Courtney had promised to take care of the logistics. The stage was set, and I was ready to light the match. You don't make a mess just to clean it up. You make a mess because you want it to stay messy. The morning of the wedding was bright and cloudless, perfect for a day meant to be filled with vows, love, and promises for the future. But for me, it was a storm waiting to hit. I woke up early. Not to get ready for the wedding, no. I wasn't planning to show up in a tuxedo to sit in the back row with my hands folded politely in my lap. I had other plans. I checked my phone, went over my notes one last time, and felt a twisted sense of satisfaction as I watched the clock tick closer to the start of the ceremony. The wedding was scheduled for 3 p.m., but I knew that the real fireworks would start long before the first "I do" was spoken. By 1 p.m., I was in the parking lot of the venue, parked a few rows away from the main entrance. The place was beautiful, a lavish old estate, complete with manicured gardens and a grand ballroom. Maggie always dreamed of getting married there. Jason probably thought it was the perfect place to convince everyone that everything was perfect. With his new life, I wasn't wearing a suit. I didn't need to. I was just another guest, a ghost in the crowd. And that's exactly how I wanted it. I made my way to the back entrance, blending in with the caterers and staff who were busy setting up. Courtney, the wedding planner, was in full motion, directing people around like a drill sergeant. She gave me a quick nod as I walked past. No questions, no hesitation. I was just part of the show. I headed toward the hall where the ceremony would take place. I knew Maggie would be getting dressed upstairs. The bride's room. It was all part of the plan. By 2:30 p.m., the atmosphere was buzzing with excitement. The guests had begun to trickle in, finding their seats and chatting in hushed tones about how beautiful the venue was. Everyone was dressed in their finest, pretending everything was perfect. They didn't know that beneath the polished surface, the whole thing was about to come crashing down. I took my seat toward the back, near Rachel and Dave, who had arrived just a few minutes earlier. They looked like they were trying to blend in, though it was hard to miss the gleam in their eyes. We didn't exchange any words. The air between us crackled with tension. Everyone was on edge, waiting for the first domino to fall. At exactly 3 p.m., the ceremony began. Jason and Maggie walked down the aisle, her in a white dress that looked like something out of a fairy tale. I felt a pang of bitterness in my chest. I had been there once. I had been the one who held her hand, who promised her the world. Now, here she was, walking toward a man who didn't deserve a single second of her affection. I steadied myself. I couldn't let the emotion cloud my judgment. I had a job to do. It wasn't until the vows began that the first piece of my plan fell into place. Courtney had sent me a quick text. Maggie just saw the message. It had been almost a full hour since I had set the wheels in motion, but I could feel it. I could feel the tension shift in the air. Maggie was still standing at the altar, but I knew she had already read the texts from Cassidy. I saw her jaw clench, her hands shaking ever so slightly as Jason spoke about their journey together. I wanted to laugh. The lies, the pretending, they were about to become nothing but dust in the wind. And then, just as the officiant asked, "Does anyone here have a reason why these two should not be married?" I made my move. I stood up slowly, calmly. The eyes of the entire room were on me. I had known that I'd only get one chance to do this. The gasps and murmurs started almost immediately. Maggie's mother, sitting near the front, looked absolutely horrified. Jason turned to me, his face pale, his mouth opening as if to speak. But I didn't give him the chance. I pulled out my phone and hit play on a voice memo. It was a recording from one of Jason's many late-night calls to Cassidy, a conversation that was about as honest as you could get when you thought no one was listening. Jason's voice from the recording: "I don't love Maggie. I never did. She's just easy. I keep her around because she believes in this whole us thing, but she'll never know how much I'm lying to her. It's better this way. She doesn't deserve to know the truth." The room fell silent as the words hung in the air like a bad stench. Maggie froze, her face draining of all color. Jason's expression shifted from shock to confusion, and then to something else: guilt. He reached out to grab Maggie's arm, but she pulled away from him with a force that made it clear she wasn't interested in anything he had to say. I didn't stop there. I hit play again. This time, it was a text exchange, a series of messages between Jason and Cassidy where he had promised her that he was done with Maggie. I'd already sent these screenshots to the rest of the guests. Every single one. The same people who had been watching them with false smiles just moments ago were now reading the truth. I saw Rachel and Dave in the back of the room, trying not to grin. They had their phones out, too, sharing the moment with their own circle of friends. The chaos that followed was swift. The officiant tried to regain control of the situation, but it was too late. Maggie was already breaking down, tears streaming down her face. Jason was fumbling for words, but none of them mattered. I didn't need to say a word. The damage had already been done. I left before the police showed up. I wasn't stupid enough to stick around when everything was falling apart. But I'd made my point. Everyone in that room, every single person, knew who Jason and Maggie really were. The world they had so carefully constructed for themselves had been exposed for what it was: a lie. As I walked out of the venue, I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No relief. No joy. It had been the right thing to do. It had been a necessary thing to do. But the truth is, it didn't heal anything. It didn't make me whole again. The damage had already been done. I was just cleaning up the wreckage. You think you're done, but the truth is, the consequences never really stop coming. The wedding was a disaster. Of course, that much was obvious. But what nobody tells you about a perfect plan for revenge is that it doesn't just end when you walk away. The aftermath lingers. It festers. And that's when the real consequences hit. I didn't hear from Maggie, or Jason, or anyone else for a few days. At first, I felt relief. They had gotten exactly what they deserved. The lies had been exposed. The truth was out there. No one could cover that up. But as the days wore on, that initial rush of satisfaction started to fade. I spent the next few days holed up in my apartment, rewatching the video from the wedding. Every tear Maggie shed, every stunned look on Jason's face, every gasp from the guests, I watched it over and over, dissecting the moment when everything changed. But then something started gnawing at me. The feeling wasn't guilt, not exactly. I wasn't sorry for what I did. They deserved every bit of it. But I had expected to feel different afterward. I had expected to feel a weight lift. Instead, I felt hollow. It was like I had closed a chapter, but there was no sense of closure. A week after the wedding, I got my first call. It was from Cassidy. I hadn't heard from her since the wedding day. I wasn't sure what she was thinking. I didn't even know if she was still on my side, or if she had decided that I was the one who'd gone too far. But when I picked up the phone, I could tell immediately from her voice that something was wrong. "Ben," she said, "we need to talk. We met at the same cafe where we'd gone on our first date." It felt strange to be back there. Everything about it seemed different now, tainted by the events that had transpired. She was sitting at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. She didn't look the same. There was something colder about her now, as if the woman who had once stood by my side had been replaced by someone else entirely. "I thought I could handle it," she said quietly, her eyes not meeting mine. "I thought the revenge would make everything better, you know. But now I can't stop thinking about how many people's lives we just ruined." I could tell she was struggling. The guilt was eating her up inside. She had been an active part of the plan. She had helped me expose Jason and Maggie for who they were. But now, faced with the aftermath, she was questioning everything. "I never thought about the other people. The friends who were there. The family. They'll never look at me the same way again," she admitted, her voice cracking. "I don't even know if I can look at myself the same way anymore." I sat down across from her, still unsure of how I felt about her remorse. I had already made my peace with the fact that I was the one who'd executed the plan. She had her own part in it, but this was my war. And yet, seeing her break down in front of me stirred something in me. "You didn't make them lie. You didn't make them cheat," I reminded her, trying to put things into perspective. But there was no real conviction behind my words. I knew the truth. We had all made choices. And those choices had consequences. After Cassidy, the calls came in waves. The first was from Rachel. She was ecstatic, of course. "I gotta tell you, man, that was the best wedding I've ever attended. Everyone's talking about it. You really pulled it off." I didn't know how to respond. I didn't want to talk about it in such a casual, almost celebratory way. It felt wrong, in some way, to reduce it all to some twisted victory. But I couldn't ignore the fact that Rachel was right. Everyone had been talking about the wedding for days. It had gone viral. Photos and videos of Maggie's breakdown had flooded social media, news outlets had picked up on the scandal, and the fallout was only beginning. The next call was from Dave. His tone was less enthusiastic, more guarded. "You really went through with it, huh?" he asked, and there was something in his voice that made me uneasy. "I don't think anyone was expecting it to go that far." "It's done," I said. "They had it coming." There was a long pause. Then Dave sighed. "I get it. But, Ben, is this really what you wanted? Is this how you imagined it?" The most unexpected call, though, came from Maggie's mother. I'd known her for years. She had always been cold, distant, polite, but never warm. After the wedding, I figured she'd either be too embarrassed to speak to me or, at the very least, furious, but no. She wanted to talk. I picked up the phone hesitantly. "Mrs. Cartwright." She wasted no time. "Ben, I need to ask you something. Was it worth it?" The question took me off guard. "What do you mean? Was it worth destroying everything? Was it worth the way people are looking at us now? The gossip. The way our family will be torn apart because of your revenge." Her words stung, but not in the way I expected. I wasn't ashamed of what I'd done. But hearing her, Maggie's own mother, voice the true cost of it all made me pause. I'm not the one who destroyed things, I said coldly. You should be asking Maggie and Jason that question. But Mrs. Cartwright didn't back down. I know they're to blame. But the truth is, Ben, you destroyed your future, too. You think you've won. But the truth is, you've sacrificed something you can never get back. The line went quiet for a moment. She was right. I had burned a bridge. But I wasn't ready to face that truth. Not yet. I don't regret it, I said finally. Not for a second. Weeks passed, and the storm I had set in motion continued to rage. Maggie and Jason's relationship, already fragile, was destroyed. Their families were in disarray. Jason lost friends, business connections, and respect. Maggie, on the other hand, became something of a social pariah. But it didn't matter. It was their lives, not mine. As for me, well, I couldn't undo the damage. I couldn't undo what had happened, or fix the things I'd broken along the way. And that, I think, is the real lesson in all of this. Revenge might feel good in the moment. It might seem like justice. But it doesn't come without a cost. And now, I have to live with that. Sometimes, revenge feels like it gives you control over the world that hurt you. But the truth is, it just shifts the pain. I thought I could escape the consequences of their betrayal by making them feel what I felt. But in the end, I realized that no one truly wins in a game like this. The scars remain, and the game never really ends.